What's up, everyone? Welcome to Play Hard and Love Big Radio. My name is Nick Clark, and I'm your host for today's show. Play Hard and Love Big Radio is the official podcast of Spotted Dog Yoga and Sup Shop, based out of Folsom, California. Play Hard and Love Big Radio is dedicated to bringing you the inspirational people and the inspirational stories that you can take with you so that you live a more powerful and purposeful life. That's a pretty damn good deal. Thanks for joining us on the show. Today, I have an amazing guest with me, someone who's become a really good friend of mine, but I would say even more than a good friend of mine, someone who inspires me to be a better person. And she is just one of those people that you don't meet all the time. And I'm so excited to share her with you all. Cindy Simon, what's up?
What's up? Yeah,
hey,
Clark.
hey.
Hey.
How is it being in the studio by yourself right now? Is that the first time that's ever happened?
Oh, it feels liberating. I don't know. I almost got probably left one time in the shower by myself because I was taking too long in the morning. But I think that was the only time I've ever been almost left in the studio.
Got it. Well, I know you have more important things to do than just being in there by yourself. So that's why we set up a podcast. Plus, I mean, I didn't have you sign a waiver, which I probably should have, because you could get crazy in there. I know.
Pretty good at that.
Yeah, nice. Well, hey, thank you, Cindy, for joining us on Play Hard and Love Big Radio. Why are you excited to be a part of this podcast show today?
I'm excited to share my knowledge of how I inspire, the youth, how I create like energy within myself to be positive, to share that energy with others, whether, you're meeting somebody and you're smiling, you're giving them a hug, or, I'm definitely like an energy filler. And I feel like that energy just lives in Spotted Dog. And so I'm excited to share that energy and positivity and how I inspire students and adults.
Awesome. Yeah, Spotted Dog Yoga has a way of attracting energy like that. And so it's one of those places where you're going to go in and you're going to run into unique and energetic people like you, Cindy. And that's what I love about it. Like attracts like. And you're in the energy vortex right now. Let me tell you, it's pretty cool that you grew up in Placerville. What was it like growing up in a small town like that? I mean, it was pretty small back then, right?
It was very small. It was very secluded. I grew up on 7 acres out in the country. So, where we like played with dirt and sticks and chased our pony around for hours just to try to catch her so we could get a ride. And it was amazing. I loved growing up in the country, but when I went to school in San Diego, it was definitely like the time of my life. I went to Ponderosa High School when it was super small, and I feel like everybody knows everybody. And I loved it out in the country. And I think that as I started growing up into adulthood, I was so excited to come back to this El Dorado County and raise my kids here.
Mm-hmm. It was a good experience for you as a kid. What would you say were some of the values that you gained from growing up in a small town?
So I think the way my parents raised me and my sister, we were just old school. So, it wasn't like you just drive through the car wash. It was like, you wash mom and dad's car, you vacuum. And so you learn hard work and self-discipline. And if you want to go hang out with your friends, you had to earn it. And, there wasn't a day that we didn't have to go down the barn and feed twice a day and muck poop and all that horrible stuff. But it taught me, looking back, it taught me so many responsibilities of being dedicated and hard work and patience. And I remember days that we would go to a barrel race and our horses would not get in the trailer. And my dad said, we're not going anywhere until, you get those horses in, or we're not going at all. And so the patience that it took to get those huge beasts in the trailer, and, they're hyper, and our parents didn't spend a lot of money on horses, but they knew that they were going to go race. And so it was definitely challenging. And I think too, it's scary at times. I remember, forgetting to lock the gate and the neighbors calling us at 2 a.m. and my dad saying, get the halters. And my sister and I would be scared to death in the car because we had to go get our horses in the middle of the night and because we forgot to lock the gate. And so there was so many valuable lessons of teaching us to be responsible and what hard work is, and, and not to give up when things got hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And that's obviously translated through your entire life and has stuck with you. Just from what I know of you. And then as you're growing up, you got into volleyball in some way, shape, or form. At what point did you start playing volleyball?
So I started playing volleyball in junior high when my PE teacher recruited me and basically told me, like, you have long legs and long arms. You're really tall. You should come out. And then I did. And I remember just having no strength. I mean, besides throwing like a saddle up on a horse, we didn't do like push-ups or exercise. I mean, we ran up to the neighbor's house, but exercise was not, it was just built into what we did. It wasn't like a sedentary lifestyle. So whether we were swimming or jumping on the trampoline, we were definitely fit, but it wasn't like exercise like you do when you're an athlete. And so when I started volleyball, I couldn't even serve over the net. They like made me make a fist to try to serve over the net. I was by far the worst one on the team. And I remember as I transitioned to playing club and whatnot, that first coach came back to me and said, just so you know, Cindy, there was only a couple girls that we were ever going to cut, and you were one of them. And I'm so glad we didn't cut you because you went so far, and such a sweet lady. Her name's Lita Eddy. She ended up coming to our wedding, and she was a part of, like, she still makes comments on Instagram when my mom's in the picture, because that was a family traveling for club volleyball. And yeah, so I'm glad they didn't cut me because being an athlete has transpired to like what I am today. If there was no volleyball, I probably would have never become a PE teacher. Probably would have never been a kinesiology major. So it definitely like created the path that I walk on in life.
And why is it that you think that athletics and sports created that path for you? What was it about playing?
I think that when I was playing, like kind of some of the qualities that you have mentioned, like I just had those qualities naturally. And so when you're in a team sport and you're working for a common goal and you have those natural abilities of positive energy and encouraging others, it just came natural to me. So once I got a little bit better at the sport, it became really fun and I knew that I was good at it. And I knew that I was like helping other people, whether, you know, girls had bad attitudes or they would get frustrated super easy. I feel like I always had the like ability to talk them out of it or make a move on or get the next ball. And even nowadays with my kids, I still feel like I'm really trying to teach that, especially to my son. He's very hard on himself. And so with all of those qualities, and it coming natural, when I started at San Diego State, I thought that I was going to be an athletic trainer because I'm like, for one, I can work out. For two, I can travel. For three, I get to watch sports all day. This is amazing. And then I started the internship, and people that were passionate about it were watching like compound fracture breakdowns, slow-mo, on the computer. And I was like getting ready to barf in the trash can over here. And I started doing the internship and I was like, this is not me. I felt like if you're going to go this route, you either should be a doctor and make big bucks, or I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't, like, I have a really good nose, like a hound dog, study football players. I was just grossed out. I wasn't passionate about it. So I went into my counselor and she's like, well, you're a kinesiology major. You've been an athlete your whole life. What about teaching? And my first initial thought was like, oh my gosh, I have been the worst student my entire life. And now you're asking me to be a teacher. Like I slept through history in college. I don't even think I ever listened to one lecture in history. And now you're asking me to be a teacher. And so I just said, okay, let's do it. And so I started an internship at Hardy Elementary, which is in a hard part of San Diego. And from the beginning, it was like 4.0. I just knew that was my wheelhouse and it just came natural. And I think it was the first week I started teaching, and one of the professors at San Diego State, Melissa Randall was her name, and she came up to me and she's like, hey, Cindy, I just want you to know, I know you're just joining us kind of late, but I haven't seen a teacher as good as you and as natural as you in the last 15 years. And I think her telling me that, I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so that gave me like the confidence, and I knew that everything I was doing was kind of something I'd been doing since 7th grade. So it just came natural to me.
Yeah. Now, what is the age group that you started teaching with, and do you still teach at that same age group?
So in our student teaching, we had to teach like kindergarten, 1st grade, and then 3rd. I had a junior high that I taught at. And then my first job was at Mission Hills High School in San Diego. It was a brand new high school. So I started right out of college teaching high school, but I knew I wanted to be at the high school level because I wanted to coach volleyball. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a little bit of a transition if you're working at a junior high and then you have to go over to the high school to teach. And I think too, for my personality, I didn't really want to babysit. I knew that the knowledge that I had wasn't for elementary or necessarily junior high. So I taught in San Diego for 6 years in Mission Hills. And then when I moved back up here, there was no high school jobs available. So I started teaching at Cooley Elementary. So it's like more of a middle school. It's sixth, seventh, eighth.
Where's that at? Cooley.
In Roseville. It's out
Okay.
like West Roseville,
Mm-hmm.
off of Blue Oaks.
Yeah.
And then when I started teaching there, I started interviewing for coaching jobs. And so out in Roseville, there was a boys and a girls volleyball position, and the AD saw my resume because I had been a varsity head coach for the boys and the girls program. Of course, when you're super young and you're coming into a profession, like, can you coach basketball? Yes. Can you coach volleyball? Yes. Can you coach? And so you say yes to everything. So I had, kind of a wealth of knowledge coming in as a coach. And so Roseville High School hired me. And so I got to teach middle school for 1 year. And hands down, I hope and pray that I never have to teach middle school again. And hands down to those middle school teachers, those little fun puberty kids, that's a rough age, man. 6th, 7th, and 8th is a rough age. So to those parents with those kids out there, God bless you.
And for those parents that don't have kids that are quite there yet, good luck.
Yeah. So by coaching at Roseville, basically got my foot in the door. And so I taught at Cooley for 1 year. And then the AD came up to me and was like, hey, we have a teacher retiring. I think you should apply to the job. And it was really cool because since I was a head coach, they called some of my boys volleyball team into the office and were like, hey, what can you tell us about Coach Simon? Like, is she a good teacher, a coach? What? And so, it wasn't just my interview that got me the job. It was, my actual boys volleyball team that had my back, and, they were a great team. We actually, I think, hung a banner 2 years later, but they were a great team. And so that's how I ended up at Roseville, and I've been there since 2011.
2011, huh? So you've been there for almost 13 years.
Yeah.
That
Good
right?
thing. 13 plus 6 is 19. There we go. Year 20 next year.
Year 20 next year. That's amazing. Wow. And so how long do you see yourself teaching for?
I don't think I'll ever stop teaching. I think even when it's time to retire and my body gets old, I think that I'll still, be coming into yoga. I'll find something to teach and find some way to give back. And I think too, even with my kids, hopefully by that time we'll have grandkids, and then I'll get to teach the grandkids. And I think that it's just kind of who I am. I honestly hope I never stop teaching. I don't want to teach high school till I'm 90, but
that'd be pretty phenomenal. I can see it though. I mean, if you wanted to do it, you could do it,
Yeah. I think the question is could my body do it? I know my mind could, but my body, that could be a good question.
And so over at Roseville High School, what are the classes that you're teaching right now? I know when I had the opportunity to go over there at that point, the class that I went into, I feel like was a weights class. Is that correct?
Correct.
What other classes are you teaching at this point?
So I have 2 weight conditioning classes, which is like a weight training, but we call it conditioning. So we do agility, speed training, cardiovascular endurance. We do CrossFit. I try to mix it up so they don't plateau, they don't get bored in the weight room. So I have 2 periods of that, and then I have 1 period of PE because we're on a 4x4. So yeah, I only teach 3 classes a day, but they're longer classes. You have 90-minute classes.
Yeah, got you. Wow. And how do you mix in some yoga now and then with them?
So we had a little incident happen where the epidemiologist of Placer County shut us down for a week because of hand, foot, mouth disease. Who knows that adults can get it too, right? So the common denominator was our weight room. So we had to be out of the weight room for a week, and I got to teach some yoga. I got to teach a little bit outside of our curriculum, and it was amazing, and I loved it, and the students loved it. They keep asking for more, but there's some crossover with different classes that are taught at Roseville. And so we have a group fitness class, and they focus on some yoga and whatnot. So I have to kind of stay in my lane and, focus on the weights, the agility, the cardio. But I mean, we stretch. A lot of my stretching at the beginning and the end of class are yoga poses. And we, And the boys, especially, their new favorite word is chaturanga. I walk into
Yeah.
class after I taught, and chaturanga. It's amazing. I think it's like my new nickname.
Hey, Chaturanga. Hey,
Hey.
today on Play Hard and Love Big Radio, we have Chaturanga Simon.
Yeah.
What's up, Chaturanga?
They asked me how to spell it the other day and then posted it on Google Classroom.
Oh, and did you do that? Did you get it?
Oh, I got it. Yes, I
You
got
nailed it. That's
it.
awesome. Well, you know, I for all you all that were listening out there, you may or may not know this, but Cindy invited me to come over one day and to do some yoga with her students, and has since invited me to come back. So we're going to plan to make that happen. But I'll tell you, my experience of being over there was phenomenal, and in a lot of different ways. It was one of the first groups of kids at that age that I'd worked with, at that size of kid, the amount of kids that were attentive. Like, they were really paying attention to me. They were listening. And I know, and I give credit to you, Cindy, because I know that you have created a place where they respect you as a leader and as a person. And I can tell just by the way that you're speaking to them, by the way that they're listening to you, and then by the way that they were listening to me as a guest. And I think that that is such an important quality for kids to understand, is the value of listening and the value of having respect for other people, whoever it is, you know, same age, younger age, older age, that kind of a thing. How is it that you have taught these students and been a leader to these students so that they show up like that? What have you found to be effective day to day? What do you find doesn't work? How does it all go for you in your teaching?
So that first day when you meet your class, I definitely try to establish a relationship with students. Tell them that I respect them. Tell them I'm there for them. I tell them that I'm there because I love my job and I'm passionate about what I do. And I tell them, like, I'm human. I get it. There's going to be days we don't want to work out. There's days you don't feel well. You know, we all can come up with excuses, but I just try to tell them that, like, you will earn my respect just the same that I earn yours. So when you're out there working super hard, I respect that. And so I think that the first buy-in to them respecting me is doing the workouts with them. And I always tell them, you know, I'm not going to tell you go run a mile unless I'm willing to go run a mile with you. And when it gets hard and they, you know, can sometimes say like negative comments, I just say, you know what, we're all here. We're all feeling it. Keep the negative comments to yourself and let's say something positive. So the culture of the class, regardless of the intensity of it, it always is positive. And if somebody is going down that negative route, I'll call them out and like I'll change it to a positive light. But I think the biggest attribution that I have that I can show these students is that I'm willing to do whatever I tell them to do. Because I think so many times in exercise, whether it's like a coach or a teacher, it's constantly like being told what to do. And I've been in those shoes where somebody's, you know, maybe not in the best shape and they're like yelling at me to do 75 push-ups. And what does your brain say? Like, can you do 75 push-ups? How about you try it with me? And so like, I can feel it. Like when it gets really hard, I'll say, you know, if we're doing bring Sally up, bring Sally down, and we are dying, you know, I'm like, okay, shake it out. And I know to shake it out because I'm doing it and I'm burning too. And so I think that's the biggest and most impactful thing I do for these students is just showing that I'm willing to step up and do the work. And then the building of the relationship. So if it's a football player in class, hey, how was your game on Friday? How'd you do? Or if it's a band student, hey, I saw you out on the track. It was so hot out there. Oh my gosh, you were sweating with those drums on. Hey, way to be tough out there. Like, you know, I commend you for what you're doing. And so like you said, with class sizes of 40 to 50 students, do I reach out to every student? Do I know every student's life? No, absolutely not. But I do my best to try to make it a point. And if I don't know those students, sometimes like English language learners or students from other countries, they're hard to connect with. And so I'm like, I just give them a high five, say, hey, welcome to class. Good job. Way to show up today. And, you know, a lot of those students, they might not want to talk because they're intimidated by the language. And so I just try to care about students, and even the students that are very challenging, I try to, you know, say, hey, make good decisions this weekend, or hey, make sure you show up on Monday, and reach out to them in a different way.
Yeah.
Or if, you know, they're suspended and I'm like, hey, welcome back to class. I'm glad you made it back. And so I think just trying to make that connection with the students is definitely impactful. And then the challenging part. So the students that, like, no matter what I do, they're not going to respect me. No matter how hard I work out, they're not going to respect me. So you have that probably like very, very small percentage of students. So those students, sometimes if it's like a conversation I'm having and it's like an eye roll or something like super rude, I'll grab those students and bring them outside and just say like, hey, I noticed after I asked you to put your phone on the box, you were talking or you were doing this. Like, I get it if you're not having the best day, but I'm showed up, I'm here for you. And so I try to pull those students out, or a lot of times too, when you're like, hey, what's going on? Just whoa, like break down and cry, And so it's like they have other things going on. So even though they might be being disrespectful or acting like they don't care, when you call them on it, or like, hey, can you tell me why you're rolling your eyes at me? Would you roll your eyes at like your best friend like that? And that's when they like break down, and then you find out like, wow, they're dealing with a lot, and maybe a little eye roll is not so bad. So I think that has definitely come with some growth as a teacher. When I first started teaching, man, if you rolled your eyes at me, if you even looked at me the wrong way or whatever, I'd probably light you up. I was really, really tough. And there wasn't a huge age gap between me and these high school students. So I felt like, I had to establish like dominance and be very, very strict with my rules, procedures, expectations, managerial skills. And so where I'm at today, I've been, like you said, almost 20 years of teaching. Like these students respect me because I've been doing it for a while. They know I'm not there to be like their friend. I'm there to be their teacher and their coach.
Right. Yeah. And at the same time, they know that you care in a way that a friend does,
Absolutely.
like even though you say you're not there as a friend, but from what you're explaining and what I'm getting from you, it's like they know that if they really needed something, that they could go to you.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
there's a space you've opened for them to be like that, right?
Definitely. When I say not a friend, it's like more of like a friendship. Like when I allude to that, I'm saying like a friendship. Like we're not going to sit here and have a conversation where we like cuss, or like it's like you would text me something, or like inappropriate type of things. Because if you
Right.
cross that line, like where you're acting like their friend, they'll treat you like your friend, and they'll tell you stuff you don't want to know. And
Right.
so it's like the relationship and the rapport I establish with them is a teacher. And yes, my door is always open, but be careful what you tell me, because I'm a professional. If you tell me the wrong things, and I will report it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's that line where you as an educator have to know how to put that boundary out there for students so they don't cross it.
Absolutely. And something that as an educator or anyone who's in the field of working public service and being around people, like creating boundaries as a leader is so important, and in getting people's respect.
Yeah.
You talked about a lot of really great things right there, and I want to revisit a few of them and talk a little bit about some experiences I've had with those too, because I just want to drill those points home, because I feel like it's not just in teaching in school or teaching yoga, or it's in every aspect of life. The first thing you talked about is how important you feel like it is that you step in and you do the work with them, that you show them that it's possible and that you're willing to put yourself in the fire. Like I know that can relate to any aspect of life. And of course, I'm an athlete, and I coach my son Owen's soccer team, and I coached him last spring. And they're like these 4 and 5-year-old boys running around doing, playing. And after one of our practices, like when I go out there, I put my boots on, I like get the ball, I'm kicking the ball around, I'm like running around with them. They all have a ball, they're all active, right? And after one of the practices, this other coach comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, how old are those kids you're working with?" It's like, "Oh, they're 4 and 5." And he's like, "Oh, I can't even believe that those kids listen to you." And I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of like stun faced, Katie's standing there, I didn't know what to say exactly. And Katie's like, well, it's because he's out there doing it with them, like really, truly, like even at that level with kids, I'm like, I'm out there playing with them and they're absorbing it. They're listening to me. And, you look over across these fields of other coaches that are coaching, they're basically just telling people these kids how to do it. And these kids are just like climbing on the goalposts and falling through the nets and like not paying attention at all, It's just kind of funny. I thought that was interesting for sure. And And then the other thing is it's spotted dog yoga. What I've always believed and we always talk about is the importance of being a good student. If you're going to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student. You have to actually show up and practice in order to understand what it's like and what it feels like in your body in order to instruct in a way that it lands in other people's bodies. And if you're not showing up and you're not practicing and you're not getting in your body, then when you go to communicate how to do that to somebody else, it becomes really hard for them to understand what it is that you're trying to say. It's like it's more of a vibration, right? It's like it's not the words that are necessarily landing, but it's the energy behind the words that's landing in people's body. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think too, just from being in here and being in the practice and not being a yoga instructor, I feel like when it gets really hard and I'm, breathing and my body's on fire, the spotted dog instructors have a way of either saying something that's going to push you to the next level or reminding you to breathe, or they know when to sigh it out because we're all dying together. And so I've actually taken some of the words from spotted dog yoga when it gets really, really challenging and you want to give up. And I've brought those into my own class, and I think too, it helps students be like, oh, okay, I can do this. Like my mind's stopping, but my body really shouldn't be, And so I think that's really been helpful for me. And I know I've complimented several instructors here like, wow, you got me through that, just by your words or your breathing or knowing what I'm going through. So that's very important that they're practicing what we're doing as well.
Yeah, totally. And, another big thing that we are about at Spotted Dog Yoga is building community, right? And so it's like if you're going to say you're a stand for community, say you're a teacher or you're a student at Spotted Dog, or if you're a teacher or you're a student at Roseville High School or whatever, wherever you are in your life and whatever it is you're doing, if you say you're a stand for community and you say you're a stand for people, you got to show up. You got to be there. You got to see people. You got to look at them. You got to observe them. You got to say, hey, you were killing it in the band the other day, or damn, Cindy, those chaturangas, they're so damn good that I think I might start calling you Chaturanga Simon.
Right.
But really though, you got to be there, and I think that's, I don't know if this is, well, I want to bring it up and I want to get your opinion on it because in 2020, we went pretty virtual, and then we've kept the virtual programming, but some people still don't come in the studio. They're still virtual like all the time. And I know there's a convenience aspect to it. And I really get that, but one part I don't understand is that being around people and the energy, the palpable energy of actually being in the flesh next to people is so powerful. I wonder why it is that people are so afraid to get back in and to get back around people. And Katie and I are sometimes like, should we even keep the virtual program? Like, what do you think about it? That whole aspect of it.
I think that those individuals have found their comfort zone, and whether they're scared or it's as and it's taken years to transition out of what COVID did to us and this community and this country. And so I think that some of those people, the way that their mind thinks or their brain thinks, and when they show up and they're at home on their mat and you're right there, they're in this comfort zone, and maybe they're just not willing to step out yet. And I think it's, unfortunately, it's probably going to take some change for those people to transition back into society. And I mean, just even for the younger students, years and years it's taken. And, it's for the younger students, I feel bad for them. I really honestly do, because they were at such a vulnerable age that they missed out on part of adolescence. Like when we grew up, it was like, go on a swing or go run. We were never scared. We were never afraid. Go jump on your horse. Hey, grab a volleyball. Hey, eat these fruit snacks and not think about what was on the ball. And then you put, mask on these kids' faces. They're scared to touch anything. They're scared to give you a high five. And then they come back and all the teachers have to wear masks. And so I'll never forget, when we got to take off our mask, I had two females in weight training. I took off my mask and one of the girls looked up at me. She's like, oh my gosh, you're so pretty. And I was like, she doesn't even know what I look like. And I've been her instructor for a year, and getting back to giving high fives and giving hugs versus oh, here's an elbow tap or an eyebrow lift. And so I think that we're transitioning as a culture back to where we were. Like every student gives me a high five, sweaty, disgusting. They're giving me high fives. Some of them give me 10. I had a student the other day ask me for a hug, and that is normal and it is okay. But because of the way the culture was and how scared and paranoid that some people are and probably will remain, I think it's challenging. And I think it's challenging if you don't have an open mind or you don't have like-minded people in your circle. Like, Nick, let's say I was really scared and I was like, hey, Nick, I don't know if I can come into the studio today. I'm like kind of freaking out about germs and, somebody might be practicing next to me and has a cough. I guarantee you would get me in your studio. I don't know what you would say to me, but you would probably make me feel comfortable enough to get me in the studio and push me through it and we'd work it out. There's people that don't have that inner circle to like get them out of that zone, that their mind is so narrow in. And so I think having that inner circle of people that are like you can help get you to that next level of comfortness.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I mean, you become who you hang out with in a sense, or you become where you go to work out, or you become where you work, that kind of a thing. Let's talk about your inner circle, Cindy.
Oh.
Spotted Dog Yoga is a part of your inner circle, obviously the teachers and the family and the community there, but like your husband and your kids and all the amazing relationships that you have in the area here. How have they helped you become who you are?
Well, when I moved back up here, I actually have like a core group of girlfriends that I went to high school with. And so we've all moved back here eventually. And so, having that relationship with them since I was 14 years old, my kids call them auntie. There's no bloodlines, but that relationship is amazing because, you want a date night or, hey, can I take your kids over for a sleepover because my husband's working and I have an open house and I have nothing to do. So let me take your kids and let's raise our kids together. So I have those relationships. I definitely have my family. My family is probably, with me being an individual, it's not just about family. I need balance in my life. So I have my family, I have my career, I have working out, I have all these little things that make me happy, that make me who I am. And so my family is, of course, so important to me. And moving back from San Diego up here, my mom has said so many times, I thought I lost you to SoCal forever. I never thought you were coming back. So to have my mom, my husband's mom raising the kids, and when we're at work, I don't think there's any better love than a grandma love besides your parents. And so having that inner circle, and my sister lives, 7 minutes away. And so my family is constantly there. We always try to make our family, see them once a week. We do family night on Sunday nights. We're watching football. All the grandparents come to all the games, and, so family is huge, and I love and adore them. And I'm so grateful, when I talk to people, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so blessed to have your family here. We don't have anybody. And so, I feel blessed to move back to the area and have my family. And then I have my get up and go girls, my girls that are just hey, we need a girls weekend. What are you up for? And so I have those girls that can drop anything and everything to make sure that we have girl time. And so I cherish those relationships as well. Those are the more adventurous, authentic, that fun loving energy that are willing to do, hey, let's go hike up to Monkey Rock today. Let's do it. And some girls aren't going to make it to Monkey Rock. Let's be honest. So I have that. And then I have, my community at work, which is very inspiring. I think my community at work constantly fills my glass, and as educators, I think, especially as classroom teachers, you shut the doors, it's you and your kids. Well, in my occupation, we're constantly around each other. We're in the weight room, we're in the gym, we're in the PE classroom. And so, staff members and, people in my department telling me man, Cindy, you are amazing. Or man, I walked by the weight room today and you're killing it. Or I have a campus monitor that's been swinging by. Her son's getting married in November. And she's been watching some of the stuff I do and exercise, and she's lost so much weight, she actually had to go get a new dress. And wow. So she recently told me or sent me a text about how much I was inspiring her. And she asked me if I was really human. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, wait, I've got that question before. And she's like, when? I'm like, oh, when I taught yoga last week because of hand, foot, mouth disease. And one of my students said, Miss Simon, are you really human?
I love it
Oh,
though. That's
yeah.
so that's amazing. So you get are you really human, Miss Simon? And you are so inspirational all the time. That's what you get, huh?
I do. And,
Yeah.
especially when I'm in like my wheelhouse, if I'm at work or I'm in the studio, when I'm doing my thing I do with exercise, I think probably that's when I'm most inspiring. And when I'm around kids, I just have this like knack to connect with kids. And I think too, as toddlers, a lot of my friends or people are like, how are your kids so well behaved, or what do you do? And so I know that with kids, I have a natural connection. And I'm hard, I get it. I'm hard. My mom was hard. And I think, I'm all about the old fashioned way. There's nothing wrong with the old fashioned way. And I think that if you look at us and our friends and how we all turned out and how we're thriving in this life, I'm like, if I can make my kids thrive like my husband and I and our family, more power to you. Like, put it in first gear and let's go.
Yeah, totally. Well, what would you say to parents out there who have kids, high school kids? Let's go with that.
Ooh, high school
And
kids.
yeah, what would you give them as a nugget? I mean, obviously they're going through it and they're having their experience, and I have so much respect for all parents, but as a teacher of high school kids, what would you say to parents of high school kids at this point, um, for them to continue to stay inspired and motivated and excited about what's happening for them and their families?
There's a couple words that come to mind. Number one is moderation. I don't think students nowadays know moderation. When I do my questionnaire at the beginning, I make them go on their cell phone and enter how much screen time they've had in the last week. There's no moderation there. And so I think moderation is number one. I don't care what they do, whether it's the cell phone, whether it's sports, whether it's sleeping, whether it's them eating fast food, whatever it is. I feel like these students need moderation, and a lot of them don't. Or even a sedentary lifestyle, they're so sedentary that their bodies are not even, or their minds are not even working like they should be working. So moderation would be one. I think two, being present, like just know what's going on. And I get it. High school kids, especially boys, don't want to tell you a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I could ask a high school boy walking into the locker room, hey man, how was your weekend? Good. Walk in, female, hey girl, how was your weekend? Oh my gosh, Miss Simon, you would not believe what happened. Blah, 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 and like goes on for like 2 to 3 minutes. So I get the different personalities of the genders, but regardless of gender, I would just tell them to be present. Like, know who their friends are, know when they're playing sports, what makes them go, what is a trigger that they don't like, and stay away from their triggers. And then I think too, I mean, parents nowadays have trackers on the kids. They know where all they're at, and but I do think that there's safety behind it. And parents sometimes, I think, at this, from what I've heard and what I've seen, are naive. They think their kids are the best, which our parents were naive too. I get it. But I mean, I've seen tragedy happen, and I just, it breaks my heart when I feel like, man, if those parents knew and were present, that their kid was hanging out with that circle of friends, or that kid was, selling drugs over here, or down at the park waiting for a fight to happen. And I think if you're present and you know who's around your kids and you know what your kids are up to, I think that can really help parents thrive in a relationship. I think even with my kids, like, I know it's going to be challenging when they're in high school. And, high school kids they're young adults. They don't want you all up in their business. And so I think, from even what I've talked to my friends with their kids going through puberty now and their tween years or whatever, is finding, like we talked about, finding that boundary where it's okay that you don't want to talk, go in your bedroom, blah, blah, blah. But when mom says, hey, let's have a convo, we're going to be out here for 10 minutes. I don't care if we're talking about dinner, what you did at, your first break at school, or what your English teacher's talking, but just making sure that there's that time. And I was talking to some of the volleyball girls the other day, and, they were waiting outside the gym for their coach. And I was like, man, do you guys realize, because they're in my weights class, I see them in PE, and then I'm seeing them after school, and I'm not even the girls' coach right now. I'm like, do you realize I get to hang out with you guys more than your parents right now? And they kind of looked at me. I'm like, I probably know you better than your own parents do right now. And they're like, you're so right. And they go on to tell me, after school, after volleyball, I go to club, I do this, I get home at 9:45 at night, I eat dinner, I do my homework, and I basically say hi to my parents.
Dang.
And so I think too, if you're present when they walk in the door at 9:45, guess what? I'm going to be there for that 10 minutes while they eat dinner. And just, even if I don't have to have a huge long conversation, like show up and let them know that I'm there, because there's not a lot of hours in the day when it comes to high school students, if they're active and involved.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love that. Moderation and presence. Just being present. And I know that when I'm present, that my kids are present. I mean, my kids are young enough to where they're pretty much always present, more, and they bring me back into presence. So it's more for me, like when I'm present with Katie, and I'm really listening to her, or as I'm present with you right here, I can hear you and be there for you and listen to you. And I don't have to say anything remarkable. I don't have to say anything at all. Even like sometimes just being there and just letting people know and letting them have a feeling that I'm there for them. It gives them the ability to share and to be vulnerable and to get off their chest what they need to, like, Owen, sometimes first couple times I picked him up from school, I'm like, dude, what'd you do today? What was it like? This. And he's like, man, we didn't do much, and I know he loves his school. He loves it. And I know they're doing fun stuff, and so Katie said, you know what? I tried. I just picked him up and was like, hey, buddy, good to see you. And I just was driving and was quiet and just listening to him and looking at him. And then all of a sudden he started telling me what he did all day long. Right. So I started trying that. I'm like, okay, hey, what's up, Owen? How's it going, bud? Good, Dad. Good. All right, cool. And then I just like drive. And next thing you know, he's telling me all these amazing things that he did. So it's almost like, you don't have to prod at them. You don't have to, figure out everything that's going on with them every day. But if you just are there, they'll tell you, it's kind of cool.
What I think it's interesting you say about that. I think it's a lot of gender too. So like if you ask a female something, she'll tell you, my daughter will tell me. And even in my own relationship with my husband, if we're in this conversation and it's maybe intense or, he'll stop and I'm like, are you going to answer me or what? But he's processing it. He's thinking about it. He's thinking about the way he's going to answer it. And if I sit there and blah, blah, like nitpick, he's not going to say anything. If I, like you said, listen, you just listen. And then all of a sudden, bing, 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 blah, 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 blah. And he tells me all about it. But there's something that the gender just needs. They like time to process. They like to tell you when they want to process. And I've noticed, so my son's very, very similar, right? So I pick him up. And so I've learned it's the questions too that you ask. So it's not like, how was your day? Or, what did you learn in class? Those like very broad. You have to ask specific questions. And so you want to know who's in your kid's friend circle. Hey, buddy, at first recess, who'd you play with? And blah, blah, blah. Oh, awesome. Did you play any sports at second recess? Oh, yeah, we played football. And so I think it's the questions or, hey, I got an email from your teacher and she said in social studies, you guys, did this science experiment. What happened in your science experiment? Did it explode? So I think too, being present enough to know what's going on or asking like the questions that kind of make them answer you.
Yeah, got you. No, I love that thing. And there's a level of intentionality in the words and what it is that you're asking too. I get that from what you're saying. Thanks for the tip. I get it. Yeah. It's such an interesting process learning how to communicate with younger people. And one of the things I've been blown away with ever since I've met you and started to understand about what it is that you do is like how you have this amazing ability to connect with people in general, but with a younger age group in a way that I know inspires them and motivates them and helps them feel like that they're supported and that they have somebody to come to if they need to. And you're the people that we need more of, Cindy.
Oh, thanks. I think too, like, I just think of like, if you're a grumpy person, let's say you're a grumpy secretary at a desk, at the end of the day, how do you feel? Right. So you've yelled at some people, you've bossed some people around. And right. I think even on my worst days, I can give you a prime example. The other day, they're redoing Green Valley Road. So I had 3 meetings in the morning, one with the assistant principal, and it's collab, which means we have meetings, and then we have a late start, 9:25. I'm stuck on Green Valley Road for an hour and 45 minutes. I'm thinking, man, I could have been in San Francisco. I could have been up at Lake Tahoe. And my makeup's going to look really good today because I just sat in the car for this long. So not a great day by any means. I want to bite somebody's head off. By the time I get to work, I'm like shaking. So I
Mm-hmm.
missed all 3 meetings. I text my assistant principal telling him, sorry, I was stuck in traffic for an hour and 45 minutes. He doesn't even respond.
Wow.
And then, not to mention, I show up 20 minutes late to first period. So I'm even late for my students as a role model. So my department's great. They, take roll. They just say, oh, she's going to be late. Like, it's great. It's not that big of a deal. But me, I'm upset. So not a great day. So as students are coming in and I'm giving high five, I'm like, breathe, breathe, right? So I could have, from that point on, had the crappiest day ever. It was a bad morning, everything that happened. And instead, I walked in that weight room and I was like, we're going to have a great workout today. We're going to push ourselves. We're going to lift heavy. We're only doing 3 sets of 8. I don't care where you're at in your regimen. We're all doing 3 sets of 8 and we're going to lift heavy. And I walked out of first period feeling great, feeling back like myself, motivating kids. They're like, I can't give you high five because my biceps burn, Miss Simon, like things like that. And so I think that I try to take that, even when it's negative energy, it's a bad day. Those people that just tend to fall into that category, whether it's a kid, a high schooler, the secretary, I always try to take my positive energy and I'm like, man, if I could make them as happy as I feel, like, even with kids, I think too, just giving that positivity out in the world, I think it's contagious. And I think, Nick, you do a great job. I don't think I've ever seen you in a bad mood. I don't think I've ever seen you not smile. I've never been to one bad class of yours. And so I think that smile, that energy, that contagious positivity that you and your community in Spotted Dog have it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It is really amazing how you can make a difference for someone just by looking them in the eye or saying hello or even just smiling or answering them, taking the time to slow down and answer them. And yeah, I mean, I have days where I want to bite people's heads off, like
Yeah, we're human.
I am not a superhero. I am a human being too, but like there's 2 things I want to point to is that yes, we have a choice. Like you had a choice that day. You could have gone in there and been a grump, right?
Absolutely.
But then you show up and the community that you've created and the people that you work so hard with every day are counting on you, and you see them and the importance of action, and you just put yourself in action. And then when you put yourself in action, then everything changes. And I know that to be true all the time. If I've got an issue and I'm like grumpy or whatever, it's in my head. It's a mental affliction that I have because of experiences or things that have happened, that day or that year or whatever. And it's my choice to sit there and just sit in my thoughts. I could sit there and dwell on my thoughts and make it worse and worse and worse and worse. Or I could put myself into action, get in front of people, support people in being better, and show them that you don't have to get stuck in your head. You don't have to have a bad day. And I guess my point is it's not just a choice. There's a lot of times people say, oh, it's a choice to be happy. It's not just a choice. It's the action that you take to step out of it, and I think a lot of people just don't realize, like, oh, they think that they can mentally work themselves out of it, but it's like, no, you got to put yourself into action. You got to see people, you got to be, move your body, you got to do something different with the way you're sitting, whatever. And that's what's going to ultimately open up some energy and airwaves for you so that you can make a shift, so.
Absolutely.
Man, you just got me excited right there, Cindy. Hey, we don't have a whole.
I won't tell my husband.
I haven't met Les yet, but I know
you missed him practicing, man. He tears it up in here. I'm surprised with those big old arms and shoulders and all those muscles he can get down into his chaturangas.
Dang right. Well, I mean, he's actually coming back from some injury, right?
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago, but yes, that was a very devastating injury when he missed the rack and he had 335 up bench pressing, missed the rack, God. And his pec tore off his bicep. So yeah, 3 surgeries later, staph infection, almost losing his arm, questioning, whether he's going to be able to be a firefighter, So now it looks like he has a huge shark bite. So let's say from like here to here, it's like a huge scar. So, but he's healthy. He's strong. That guy's a machine. He is a machine.
Yeah, I know. I've seen pictures of him and I've heard about him. We had some mutual friends over yesterday, and we were talking about you guys. And our buddy Roger, he's talking about how Les is just a machine.
He is. I mean, he's done yacht in here a couple times. He's done power. But I mean, it's crazy. If you ask, like my sister asked him, they're building an arena. So each panel was like 12 feet by 10, over 100 pounds. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many panels they had, maybe 100. And so she asked Les to go help move these panels along with probably 5 to 7 other people. And people are complaining and can't lift panels. And my sister told my mom, she's like, thank God for Les. He is a machine. And he is. I mean, I remember my dad had this huge 20-foot plant. And he's like, hey, can you send Les over? I need to move this plant out of the house. And so I walk up the stairs and he goes, well, where is he? I'm like, where's the plant? He's all, he moved that thing all by himself. And it was like this huge thing. I was like, oh yeah, he just picked up a tree and moved it outside. No big deal. And it's funny though, because you move furniture with your significant other, right? I feel like I'm fit, I'm strong, and I'm like, can I get a break? And he's all, seriously? I'm all, oh.
What does he think about the yoga practice? Because I don't know how often he does it, but I imagine that what he's done it like a few different times. What does he think about it?
He loves it.
How does he like it?
He loves it. I think he loves to mix up his workout. He works out very intense. He does rucking. I mean, I think I got him like a 30-pound vest or something. I didn't even want to carry the thing out of Dick's. And here he is like running hills with it. And he's constantly training. I mean, he does CrossFit. We have a gym in the garage. In the summertime, like, you take the boat out in the morning and you're kind of out on the water. We're not exercising. I look back on the swim deck and my husband and my son are doing push-ups. And so it's just a way of life. I don't think there's anything like he doesn't do and do it well, which is very frustrating for me. When we were in San Diego, though, when we played beach volleyball, I used to give him a hard time because his arms are so big, so he can't get his platform together to pass, right? So he'd go like this, and then the ball would bounce off, it would shank. And so they would always start serving him. So I'm like, get your platform together. And he's so buffy, but he was still really good at it. He's probably better.
Get your platform together, Les.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So no, he's good at everything we do. He's like Roger said, he's an animal, man. There's not much that guy can't do. Yeah.
Well, I feel the same way about you. I want to chat about your yoga practice. You send me messages now and then. You're like, oh my gosh, I burned 450 calories at this yoga practice. It kicked my butt. Or pictures of like Kristen showed me a picture you sent the other day to her where she was like, I think you accidentally sent it to her, but you're like sweating. You're like dripping sweat. Here's the thing about Spotted Dog Yoga. You can get out of it what you put into it. And it's not just, it's life, but at our studio, it's like you can always go further and always push harder to get more and see more possibility. How do you do that in your practice?
I think for one, I always when I walk through the doors, I always like, man, I am so blessed to be here that I have time in my life that I can give up myself like an hour. I get to focus on just me. These are my people. This instructor is here for us. So that's the first thing is like the mindset. I'm always like telling myself, I'm so grateful to be here. I get an hour to myself. I'm not focusing on my kids or my students. It's all me. And I think most working women nowadays, you can say you don't get like a full hour to yourself. Like, oh, sweet, I get to meditate for 5 minutes. Okay, I get to cook dinner in the kitchen by myself as you're doing 5 other things, And so having an hour to myself, I just feel like so blessed. And I'm always like so grateful. And when I get on my mat, I just always clear my mind. And I'm like, this is you and your practice, and you get to focus on yourself. And so I always feel grateful. And then as the practice goes and it gets harder and like your muscles are burning and, obviously like the breathing and whatnot, I always tell myself, like, if I'm here to show up to do average, I'm going to be average. If I'm here to show up to just get a workout in, I'm just going to get a workout in. And I think so what Spotted Dog has taught me, like at first it was physical. I get it. I was a little heavier. I had my daughter and, I wanted to like burn some serious calories and feel better about myself. And then as I continued to practice, it wasn't just physical. Then it became like emotional where I'm like, okay, I'm going to push myself outside of this comfort zone. And now it's not just going to be physical. I'm not telling myself, just do this, just do that. So now it's pushing myself to a place where like emotionally, like there's been times after class that like all of a sudden I cried and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like a breakthrough. Or I felt like one time I like at the end when we're doing our ohms, I like felt like an out of body experience. Like some crazy stuff has like transformed my body through yoga. And then I think just like emotionally and the community, like the social part of it, it's just come full circle for me. So it started the physical, but like emotionally and socially, it's like amazing to me. It's definitely like transformed who I am. And I think it's transformed me as a teacher too. I have more patience, and, the connection that I have to kids, or maybe what I say to them that helps them get out of their own head because of what I've learned here. I know it's helped me be a stronger teacher. And last year or 2 years ago, I had an evaluation, and my assistant principal said, well, what are you doing to connect to the community? It was like one of my goals. And I said, well, I go to Spotted Dog, and, Nick came in. And so I revisited that this year because I'm like, you hadn't been in, and, these kids are constantly, oh, Miss Simon has that Spotted Dog hoodie on, she's a yogi, or I'm teaching tumbling. They're like, oh, she's really good at it because she does yoga. And so these students in my weights conditioning class were like, we're going to show up, Miss Simon. We're going to show up, and we want to see what your yoga is all about. And 5:45, they showed up. And so consistently for 3 weeks, I had students from Roseville High School here in your studio at 5:45 killing it. And they were awesome. And so they've been asking, so they're kind of coming to the end of the season. I have a water polo player, I have a football player. And so they're kind of coming to the end of the season where they're had midterms, and they're like, well, we're going to get back in there. We want to do it again. And then I think, I told them they have a student discount, so they're excited about that, but they love it. And so I think just bringing the community in to showing like what it has to offer is amazing.
Awesome. Well, I am incredibly grateful. Katie is incredibly grateful, and this community is so grateful for everything that you do in relationship to working with kids, and relationship to just spreading good, positive vibes. And also in relationship to sharing the good word of Spotted Dog Yoga. I know that this podcast is going to open up people's minds and get them to see that there's more possibility for them at the studio from everything you've shared. So thank you, Cindy.
Absolutely.
Hey, final parting words. Anything you want to share that you haven't had a chance to share, or any dirty jokes you want to tell? No,
no, I think this podcast, I've done a very, very good job keeping it PG. So I'm gonna roll with that. And by the way, I did purposely text Kristen that the text prior to that was not for her. I was wishing her happy birthday. It was the wrong Kristen, by the way. And then I realized it in the morning, and then she didn't even say anything. I was like, oh my gosh, you must think I'm such an idiot. She's like, you were cracking me up. And at that point, I sent her the face of the red sweat. But I try to do that in the morning when I come out of here, and I feel like $1,000, right? That red face, that glow. I will send my friends that picture from time to time saying, hey, how are you starting your morning? I hope you get some exercise today. Like, I just burned this many calories. And, I think just having that inspiring word to like get people up and moving, whether it's early or late. I mean, definitely would rather get my workout done in the morning. But no, so I did mean to send her the red face picture. That is true. And I think too, people also need to know, I know I talked about moderation, but as you know, I don't practice yoga 7 days a week. And so I think there's a little bit of a stigma. Like if you belong to a studio, you have to practice this many times or do this. And so for me, I'm in here once, maybe twice a week if I'm lucky with my schedule and my kids' schedule. And so like if you're going to do a little bit of yoga, a little bit of weight training, a little bit of walking, a little bit of hiking, a little bit of running, I just say like find what works for you. And it doesn't have to be a hardcore power class that, makes you go crazy. I say just like find what works for you. And for me, it's a little bit of everything. And in an ideal world, sometime when I retire, absolutely, I would practice more than once a week. But I don't ever beat myself up because, hey, Saturday and Sunday, I do chores and I'm coached my daughter's soccer and I watch my son's baseball and I do all this stuff. And if I don't exercise on Saturday and Sunday, I don't beat myself up. And I think that for the community that works out constantly, you just have to find moderation. So
yeah,
that would be my parting words, Nick.
Awesome parting words. I will say this to just cap on what you're saying. Consistency is the most important thing that you can create in your life if you want to make shifts. If you want to make shifts in your communication, you want to make shifts in your body, right? And you want to make shifts in your life. consistency is incredibly important. And in regards to what you're saying with the yoga practice, there's 52 weeks in a year. If you came 52 times in a year, that would be way better than just coming 10 times here and there, or trying to go 5 times a week for 3 weeks and then stopping and only getting 15 times in a year. So being consistent in whichever modality of working out that you're doing is incredibly important, along with the moderation. I mean, of course, I love hiking and biking and fishing and hunting and doing all the different things like that. And yoga just complements it and makes it better. So
yeah, I won't bring up the camping hunting trip with you and Roger and your tent.
I think that's a good story. I mean, made Roger and I, we have to tell it now real quick. Wait,
okay,
are you good on time? Are you good on time?
Yeah.
Okay,
I told my husband this story too, by the way.
Oh my gosh. So my buddy Roger, I call him up and I'm like, hey man, the salmon are running up in Riggins. We got to get out of town and we got to go fishing for some salmon and some steelhead. And he's like, all right, he's totally game. Well, turns out first and foremost that the salmon weren't really running. I got poor information. So we got up there, we didn't really catch anything. But the funny story that you're talking about is that when I was setting it up, I said, hey, Roger, I'll pack my small tent and let's just roll. And I kind of assumed he would pack a small tent too. I just packed my single person tent. So we get up there and I'm like, hey, dude, where's your tent? He's like, oh, I thought you said you were packing a tent. And I said, oh, I just packed my small tent. And he said, oh, looks like we're going to be really good friends really fast. And so we did. We tried sleeping in the small tent together. We were like shoulder to shoulder. And then, like two big dudes breathing. It started getting humid and hot in there and whatever. And then finally he like slept outside with a cot. And then he had his gun with him because he was worried that maybe like a cougar was going to come out of the hills and get him. And then of course I slept great because I had this guy, my personal security, on the outside of the tent with a gun and sleeping. And then the next night it started raining, so he ended up sleeping in the car. But yeah, that was a mistake in communication. Again, I could have done more yoga and communicated better.
Yeah.
So
it's a great story.
Anyway.
It's a great story.
Yeah, if I got a video, I'll send you. It's pretty funny. Anyway, hey, well, Cindy Simon, thank you for being a guest on Play Hard and Love Big Radio. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to this show and for sharing it with your people. We're getting a lot of really great numbers, which means that you're sharing it with people. And that's, for us, is the most incredible thing that could happen, because that means we're making a bigger difference for more people. So thank you. Play Hard and Love Big Radio is dedicated to bringing you the inspirational people and the inspirational stories so that you can take them and go out and live a more purposeful and powerful life. And today, Cindy Simon, you certainly did that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, you're welcome. Y'all, you can get this podcast on any of the major podcasting platforms, including YouTube. So go check those out and have a great rest of your day. See you. Peace out.